Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Manitoba Agriculture Crop Talk webinar. If you have any questions during the presentation today, please type them into the Q&A icon on your Zoom toolbar, and we'll get to them at the end of each presentation. This webinar is being recorded, and you will receive a link to the recording. Thank you.
Thanks, Lori. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the July 9th edition of Crop Talk. And as we get going, during the growing season here, we see crops developing and moving on. So I think it's the season is definitely progressing, and some areas have been getting some rain, some areas haven't. I think the guys that have been getting rain are pretty happy with everything they're seeing. Some of the guys that haven't been getting the rain are getting a little bit concerned, but be that be what it is, we're getting to that time of year, or we're in some areas, we're in that time right now where we're starting to talk about Sclerotinia and canola. And thought it'd be a good opportunity to bring on Todd Drummond from Bayer Crop Science to talk a bit about Sclerotinia, timing, staging, decisions on how to go about figuring out if you need to spray or not. Todd's been working in the Southwest Manitoba here for several years. I'm going to say almost as long as I've been. And so if that's the case, it's getting to be too many years. But anyways, I'm glad to have Todd on. Todd's going to give us a talk this morning, and then we'll have some questions for him. So Todd, if you want to grab the screen, we can get right into your presentation.
Okay, I will share my screen.
Looks good. You're on mute, Todd.
Todd?
Todd, you're on mute.
Todd, if you can hear me, change that setting that we advised you to change before, where it said use your computer audio. There you go. We can hear you now, probably.
Yeah, okay. So as soon as I share the system audio, it muted me. So do I leave that one off then, I wonder?
Yeah, I think so. Yes.
Okay. Okay, how's that?
Perfect.
Perfect.
Okay. When we come to, I have a video. If we can play it, we play it. If not, what I'll do is I can share the presentation and you can forward it on to the producers if need be. So thanks, Lionel. Just let me know when time is up. I'll turn my pointer on as well. I'll reference some of it as also. So again, thanks again. Yeah, I just about 20 years with Bayer, and I spent about 9 years with Patterson Grain. So it's been a wild ride on weather and learning about fungicides and Sclerotinia and everything else. At one point in time, when I started in the industry, Benlate was actually the product that everybody used, and of course with progression and different products have moved around. But quite frankly, as far as Sclerotinia, the disease, nothing has changed. Absolutely nothing. So that is one thing we want to keep in mind. So what is important to remember with Sclerotinia is you need the disease triangle, which you need the host, which is the canola, or in this case, what we're talking about canola, but Sclerotinia also and white mold also infects dry beans. So start thinking about that as well for those navy, black, or pinto bean growers. You need the environment as well, so which is the weather, the moisture, and in particular with Sclerotinia, ground moisture, so wetness of the soil surface. And then you need the pathogen, which we know the pathogen is there because if we think about last year and the amount of rainfall that we had and the amount of disease pressure, we know the sclerotia bodies are there. So we do know that. We know the pathogen is there. It's just how does it going to move into the environment or within the stand of canola that you're dealing with. So again, when we think about Sclerotinia, this is the life cycle chart. It does overwinter in the soil as sclerotial bodies. So that is what you get in your sunflower seeds that taste terrible. That is also sclerotial bodies from Sclerotinia or white mold in sunflowers. It is one disease cycle in 1 year. So it doesn't happen more than once. It only happens once. But what you do need is you need wet soils. And I've heard in the past, I've heard 8 days, I've heard 10 days, 7-8 days. So what we do know is you do need the soil surface to be favorable to get that sclerotial body to germinate, which then forms apothecia, which is the little golf-like T structures, and then they sporulate. And what happens is when they sporulate, they shoot up into the air, and then they are taken by air streams, wind streams, and then moved on to the petals, actually, of the host crop. Now, the petals themselves, quite frankly, is what over time, if they are infected, they will fall down into the canopy. The canopy, if it is moist or any moisture within the crotches of the leaves, those petals actually fall into that area, and then that's where infection starts. So your target is your petal. Now, sclerotia bodies can also last up to 5 years, and I would say that it'll be longer than that, because if I think about last year in 2024 and what we dealt with there, and then if you think about in the Southwest in particular, I can't comment in the other parts of the province, but in the Southwest, our last big year was 2016. And in 2016, we had lots of sclerotia bodies. But every year after that, 17, 18, 19, so on and so forth, all the way through to 23, we felt that we maybe had lower pressures. And lower pressures would mean that you had less sclerotia bodies within the soil. But we had heavy pressure, extremely heavy pressure in 24. So I do feel that they survive more than 5 years in the soil. And part of it is, in order for a sclerotia body to not survive or to survive, they need moisture. If there's no moisture in the soil surface or within that layer, they just don't rot and move away. They actually stay dormant. And I talked to a member of the Canola Council at Ag Days this past year, and that's what they feel has actually happened. Because otherwise, why would you have such high levels of infection in 24? So this is the disease cycle. The petal is your target, and the pathogen is Sclerotinia that we're talking about. So Lionel asked me to talk about timing. This is just a guide that we use within Bayer. And canola is actually, I feel, one of the easiest crops to stage. So what we actually do is we look at the main stem, only the main stem. So if you pull a plant out, start knocking the leaves off, knock the branches out, and then you'll be eventually left with the main stem. And really what you're doing is you're counting open flowers on the main stem. Optimal timing is 20 to 30% flower. So 20% bloom is around 14 to 16 open flowers on the main stem. 30% bloom is about 20 open flowers in the main stem. Here, though, you also have to count anything that may have dropped. So if there's starting to be a pod formed, you count that as well. So, you know, the growers will say many times, and retailers as well will say, well, it's kind of in between. And so I always say, because the petal is the target, what I want the canola field to be the yellowest it can be without significant petal drop. And when you think about that, if the petal is infected and it's already dropped and it hasn't been protected, you could have Sclerotinia start. So what I want to get it the most yellow without significant petal drop, and that's the timing to apply the fungicide. Now, in talking about unevenness of fields and what have you, is my eyes and many other eyes are drawn to what's not normal. So for example, if you look at a canola field, you're going in on all 2 or maybe 3 sides or 4 sides, depending on how big the field is. But you have a tendency to see yellow in the field, but then you see an area that isn't yellow, right? Maybe it's a thinner area, that sort of deal. So your eye is trained there, and right away you're like, I don't know if it's ready. Stop thinking about what's out of the ordinary and think about the majority. And that's how we deal with timing. think about the majority of the flower, majority of the yellow. Do many counts. As you're walking, I try to be unbiased. Your eyes will have a tendency to pick the tallest stem that's out there. Be very unbiased. Close your eyes and drag your hands. And as you walk, the minute you hit a plant, count that one. Do an average of 10, make a loop, come back, go into the other side of the field. And that'll give you a pretty good estimation of what's going on. The other thing I find is there's these neat little toys that everybody's using now called drones. It'll give you an idea ahead of time, maybe what areas to walk to as an average of what is normal as far as how much flower could be there, and then walk in, do your counts, and away you go. So 20 to 30% bloom when the canola field is the yellowest prior to significant petal drop, because you want to make sure you protect the petals before they fall, and that's between 14 and 20 open flowers. So there's a couple other things, obviously, Lionel asked me to present, and there's a few different options out there. There is brands that we've had since 2006 called Proline, and then we have another brand called Proline Gold. And really the difference is we're still using prothioconazole in that mix, but at different rates, as well as adding different modes of action in. So Prothio is a group 3, triazole chemistry. Group 7 is an SDHI inhibitor. The SDHIs are very, very active as well on white mold. Fluopyrum is actually used in Eastern Canada for white mold and dry beans, and dry beans are super, super sensitive to white mold. So which is why we've lowered a little bit of the prothio rate, but we've added fluopyrum because it's highly active within the plant. So it moves very, very quickly, but very, very persistent as well. You're getting a high load of active ingredients. So it's similar to taking Tylenol or Advil for a headache. If you have a real bad one, you don't take 200 grams, you take 400 grams. And that is really no different what we're dealing with in the overall active load, where there's 150 grams active of Proline, but there's 250 grams of active in Proline Gold. So where would you use them? When would you think about using these products? So, assess the environmental risk. And I'm going to go into environment here just to give a better idea of what's happening for growers. And assess whether it's moderate to high or low to moderate. And really that kind of decides, well, would I just stick with maybe Proline, or do I go to Proline Gold? And we think about the disease severity risk as far as looking at the crop canopy, what weather have we had that's conducive to the disease, what is the potential of the crop? What does it look like? And then that'll allow you to decide, hey, you know what? In moderate to high levels of potential, maybe I should stick with Proline Gold. Where it's low to moderate, then maybe just stick with Proline. So you do have that option, that they do come at different price points as well. But your premium brand has more active. Again, just like the Advil or the Tylenol, has more active ingredient in it for more persistence and more activity on that disease. And then Proline would be a little bit less. So there's two different options. For once you've identified timing, again, 20 to 30% flower, or when the field's its yellowest prior to significant petal drop, and then you can decide what you might want to use. So that is timing, that is products, but then we come to weather. And this is probably on everybody's mind over the last 2 weeks, let's say, talking to growers and retails. This is on everybody's mind. So, what we do know is the North Country is fairly dry, and we've seen that. But actually, in southern Manitoba and Southwest, we're not in drought conditions. In some areas where we feel that the majority is between 70 and 90% of normal precipitation, and that's on a 30-year average is what that is. So this kind of gives you an idea. I don't know where all the viewers are from, but it gives an idea of what you might be dealing with. Because I'm specific to Southwest Manitoba, I have access to some of the other information. And I had Allison Sass actually pull this up for me yesterday. So thanks, Allison. And this gives an idea of just where you might be. So this is bead. Get my pointer going. This is bead. The black line is normal precipitation. The red line is where we're at. And you can see indeed, the weather event that we had, an increase in spikes, so we're just about below normal. 2024 is that blue line, which was high percentage of over normal for last year, and then 22 is the orange line down in the bottom right. This is Reston, so again we're just below normal. You can see 24 and 22 were similar to the snapshot in time as to when we had the data. And then we look at Souris and Boissevain on the bottom right. So Souris, and we've seen that as well with the station that's in and around Souris, is below normal. So it's just over 50% of normal. When we look at Boissevain, we're just over 100%, or sorry, we're below the normal average. But that's mils is what that is. But then when we look at 24 and 22, those bars. So really get an idea of where you're at as far as normal precipitation. And what I'm going to focus on here next in the slide is, what is the value of applying a fungicide when we think about percentage of normal? And then we can split it out if you're less than 80% or 85% or maybe over 115. And that's what I'm going to try to help growers and retails make that decision on what we've saw over time. So this slide come out of a slide deck a few years back under a pile of work across Western Canada, quite frankly. And this is looking at 3 years, 20, 21, and 22. So we could split out at the end of the year the number of sites that had low moisture, so less than 85%. There was 15 sites. 7 sites were 85 to 115, and above average, there was 3 sites over and above. So what we could see is we're about a half a bushel increase under low moisture. So at a half a bushel, less than 85, probably not. We still are seeing an increase in, the premium product over regular Proline, for example, of about another half a bushel. But this is where we really see this average rainfall pattern. And you're seeing a couple bushel increase with just regular Proline, but you're looking, call it 3 bushel increase with Proline Gold. So adjusting or figuring out, hey, if I'm going to go ahead and do it, which product should I use? And then, of course, under extremely high disease pressure situations, that's where we're seeing another increase. Now, what we don't have in here is 2024, which was quite dramatic. So that's quite interesting. So here's the video. Let me know if this actually works. I'm just going to close out, and I'll go to here, and I'll press play. Can you hear that?
Not really, no. No.
Okay, so we'll skip that. I'll send that to Lionel, and they can send it out. What it was a video from Patura Seeds in Eastern Manitoba, looking at some information of applying a canola fungicide in a dry year. So I'll share this presentation with Lionel and Lori. So really what I was saying was reiterating what they saw as a third party, and then what we've seen in the past as well. So if we think about those charts that I showed you earlier on of 21, 22, 23, and 24, and how those lines moved across in some of those years. And this is 2021. So this is a trial that was done looking in specific to Proline Gold versus Proline. And this is a grower trial shared through his combine yield monitor into Climate Field View, which is a platform that allows us to gather that data easily without being in the field with the weighing, etc. And there was a 3 bushel advantage. So again, if we think about that, this says 25 bushels and 28 bushels. Combine monitors do have to be calibrated, but what we do know is what we're looking at is the difference, which is a 3 bushel difference. And then in 22, this was actually a trial in Pipestone. The untreated check was 47. There was a 3 bushel advantage moving to Proline. So we think about 22. That was one of those other years right, that was above normal for rainfall, and Proline Gold, which is the premium product, was an extra bushel over Proline. And then we look at 23. This is a location in Altona. If you think about 23, this was a terrible, terrible year as far as drought. In a lot of cases, most growers really noticed that. And really what you can see is you can see in this slide on the left-hand side, you can see this untreated strip, and this is biomass is what this is. So you get less biomass in the untreated, so which means healthier on either side. And in that untreated, it was 64 bushels versus the treated was 68. So that's a 4 bushel advantage in what we would normally call a low disease pressure year. And then this is 24, and this is at Carmen. This is actually just a strip trial that we did for showcasing to retailers our varieties, but we thought it would be neat to see what does Proline Gold look like on the back. So that's all we did. We just sprayed it across the back, and then eventually what we did, and we can also see here, this is maturity. So if you're seeing differences in brown or green in this case, this is the maturity. So 400 in this case was earlier than 903 on this side. And that's the start of trying to manage an application. Then this is the following or the final yields. Now, again, these are very small demo strips, so there's no field variability within here. The top line is the overall yield. The middle line is the untreated yield. And then the bottom line actually is the differences within. So it ranged from 10 to 30 bushels difference in infestation rates and overall yield. So really, at the end of the day, showcasing under high disease pressure, you need to treat. This disease is a huge yield robbing disease in canola. Some of the other things that we can do as well to help manage the growers' decisions to spray, and you may have seen variable rate scripts or talk about different scripts as well. And this is something that we're doing with our digital platform. We take an image. That image is a biomass image, which helps you decide where your canopy is the heaviest, because what we do know is where it's heaviest, generally it'll have the most moisture within. And then that is a higher risk of Sclerotinia in those areas. So we say, what we want to do is we know that some of those areas don't need to be sprayed and some do. So there is a fee to sign up, get this in. You can get biomass density maps, and we will create a script for you. So it allows you to put the product where it needs to be under that high biomass area. So there's a lot of different tools to help growers make those decisions, as well as estimate where it should go on as well. So with that, hopefully I didn't speed through it too much, but this is the end of the presentation. And Lionel, I'll open it up to questions.
Okay, there's been a couple questions. First one is actually going to come from me, and it's when you showed the staging, and you're saying the best time to spray is at 20 to 30%. What do you say with the guys that still say you can go up to 50%?
Yeah. So the thing with staging is, do you want me to put that slide back up?
Sure, if you can. Yeah.
Yeah, I will. I'll get my computer skills to work here, hopefully. Okay, there you go. So as far as spraying at 50%, the issue is if disease pressure is present prior to 50% bloom when growers are maybe wanting to spray, any petal that was unprotected that has fell down into the canopy, disease can start to set in. So what we do is we're all fungicides, regardless of whatever disease, are protectants ahead of time. And the big thing there is you need to get it on ahead. If the tissue is necrotic or is moving in and starting to girdle a stem, we don't make necrotic tissue or dead tissue green again. So the issue with going too late is if the pressure has been higher and the disease pressure is there, then you probably already have disease within there. The reason we go at 20 to 30% is because there's not many branches. And if that petal has a tendency to fall all the way down and gets down to the very bottom, what you can see is the full plant dying back. 50% bloom, there's way more branches. There is a chance at that point in time, if there was no pressure early on, but those flowers that would fall maybe only hit a branch because it becomes way more heavy of a canopy and lots of branching, then maybe you might only lose a branch. So that's why we want to go earlier rather than later. And quite frankly, if the pressure was high all the way through, and we've seen it a couple different times with some different growers, especially with controlling water, maybe it's under pivots, but actually dual application. And there's been some nice responses there as well. But the canopy has to remain wet, good canopy, etc.
So when you're talking dual application, are you talking same rate as you would for a single application?
Yeah, that's right. I asked this question a while ago, and I'm going to date myself, and you'll remember this one. But Ravel Flow, Ravel was an old product that we used to sell years ago, and there was actually a 2-pass rate on there. Proline and Proline Gold is one rate. Really, what you're looking at is you're looking at the level of active ingredient to keep that plant protected and that petal protected within before over time with its weather, water, etc., that's starting to break it down. Then if you sprayed it again, what you're doing is you're looking at trying to get it on all those other flowers that are brand new. So you need that same level of protection so that it helps with being persistent and making sure it protected those flowers for the same amount of time.
Okay, so and this question is, we haven't been getting a lot of rain, but some mornings it's been foggy or the crop has been damp for up till 10 o'clock. What would you think about that situation?
Yeah, so I am a salesman, but I'm also an agronomist. I do have a degree in agriculture, so that comes out in me first and foremost. So on one of the very first slides in the disease cycle, it talked about soil wetness, or we talked about soil wetness, and so did the video. And I apologize, I couldn't get you that, but they talk about soil wetness for about 8 days. So it's soil wetness not in the canola. It's soil wetness where those sclerotia bodies are going to be germinating. And yes, over time, there'll be some sclerotia bodies within the canola as well. But generally, if it's the year previous, and I would think that last year, high disease pressure, lots of sclerotia bodies would be coming out of the canola, and you're probably into a cereal. But if that cereal canopy is maintaining because it's such a lush crop, if that soil surface is wet enough, then that's enough to get those sclerotia bodies to form apothecia and then sporulate. Now, when you're talking about wet canopy, if you're talking about the canopy of the canola, yes, absolutely. Yesterday was a prime example. That was wet here. I know there wasn't fog everywhere, but here there was fog till probably about 10 o'clock or so. And that re-wets. And of course, those leaves gather a lot of moisture. It runs down the leaf right next to the stem. And guess where the petal falls? So as long as that canopy is wet and you're running through without it drying out, if the canopy is wet, that is an increased risk for the disease development to start. As long as there's spores from the apothecia that have sporulated and then moved up in the wind streams and infecting unprotected petals.
So for soil moisture, then you're talking when you dig up the soil, like if it's rock hard, and so is that enough soil moisture still, or is?
Yeah, I would say no. It's soil surface moisture where those sclerotia bodies are germinating. I looked at a map from Allison on the crop report, and it said we had lots of soil moisture up to 30 centimeters. Well, the sclerotia bodies are germinating closer to the surface, right? Probably in some trash. So that's where we want the soil moisture to be enough to get that sclerotia body to form a mushroom, with this is the apothecia, and then sporulate after that.
Okay, and this is an interesting question. What is your cutoff, whether to spray or not?
Cutoff on crop
whether
health.
it's worthwhile spraying, I guess.
Yeah. Well, we used to say, and I'll age myself, we used to say 35 bushel crop, anything over 35, you automatically spray. A part of that is there's a factor of what the commodity is worth as well. So I think we started to think about that. And because I also showed you a bunch of slides, and what we're seeing, worst case scenario, 2007, when I started with Bayer back in the Southwest, Boisemain area was spraying. West of Boisemain was spraying sometimes, and then west of that wasn't spraying at all. So I was doing lots of different trials, and worst case scenario, I saw 1.6 to 2 bushel advantage. So do the math. If we're talking $16 canola, let's say 15, 16, there's $30 an acre. So we know worst case scenario, what you're getting is you're getting the cost of the application, the product back. Now, again, we don't do it just to turn money, but protecting that plant for the unknown that's happening is important as well. It's like buying an insurance premium and always getting your premium back. So the way I look at it, especially with a bunch of the data that we've got in 21 and 22 and 23, et cetera, and showing that with the unknown that we had with last year, if we didn't do it, I'd be beside myself thinking, well, there's not many sclerotia bodies. I'm glad we did. So the cutoff, I would say, is the crop health as far as, what do you think the potential is? And then it's quite frankly a gut call as to how much soil moisture is out there to allow a mushroom to be produced within that canopy that may or may not remain wet. So I would say, if I look at the slides that I showed you before, 2000, just hang on, I got this still pulled up. I think you can see it right here. So there's a slide, less than 85% moisture. So this is 3 years of data. We were seeing a half a bushel. So half a bushel is 8. So less than 85% moisture would be one of those ones where it's like, you know what? You're playing with the unknown, right? The minute we're over 85%, we can see that return on investment. So again, there's a lot of unknowns, and the unfortunate thing with retailers and growers is we've got a lot of guesses. The tools that we need is past research, bouncing ideas off one another, that sort of deal. What I have heard anecdotally too is that, and the presentation or the video that I was going to show, they talked about an increase of yield in low disease pressure. And I think there is some plant health benefits as well. So staying greener longer, pushing more yield within that canola, standability better, harvestability better. So better harvestability means maybe your combine load is even rather than slowing down, speeding up, trying to manage that flow of grain that's going into the combine. So if you speed up and overload, you're throwing out. So there's that to it as well. So there's a lot of different factors that go into making that decision.
Okay, that's all I have regarding Sclerotinia. And I guess one question that I've been getting just the last couple of days here, and you've been in a few canola fields. Have you been hearing or anybody talking about cabbage seed pod weevil?
So I was at Crop Diagnostics and they talked about it.
Okay.
So I have not. To be honest, I have not been sweeping either. Okay. So that's that would be the other thing. Yeah, no, I can't comment. What I can comment is on is all the other weevils that we're dealing with, pea leaf weevil, alfalfa weevil, and that I have seen and witnessed feeding, but cabbage seed pod, no, I can't say I have.
Okay, I see John is on. So maybe John, while I brought that up, do you have any comments regarding the cabbage seed pod weevil?
Yeah, so we're doing a cabbage seed pod weevil survey currently, and now we've only had time to process a few of the fields. Levels are dramatically up from previous years. Now, when I say dramatically up until this year, we've had trace levels where if we swept hard enough, we could find a few, but that was it. So nowhere near thresholds. This year, we've seen a quite large increase. most of the fields that we've swept so far seem to be below threshold, but we did have a field, it was actually just outside of Carmen here, where the numbers that we got doing our survey were actually above the threshold level, which in 10 sweeps, the threshold is 25 to 40. So you're looking at 2.5 to 4 weevils per sweep on average. We were doing 25 sweep sets. And we did have one where we were actually over, I think it was 229 in 25 sweeps. So that field was slightly above threshold. But even the fields that are below threshold levels are certainly up. So we've had this increase in populations. So bottom line, good to be sweeping the fields. Sweeping is the only way to really know what you've got. Do a couple of sets, or at least a few sets of 10 sweeps. If you're not getting at least 25 to 40 in 10 sweeps, you're probably okay. If you are, then you might need to consider whether you treat. Couple cautions though. One is don't just figure because you've heard there's some seed pod weevil around, you'll mix something in with your fungicides and not worry about it. You could cause more harm than good if you do that and you didn't have seed pod weevil, because unfortunately the only products registered are broad spectrum, so they will kill everything. Pollinators actually do increase your canola yields. You will get decent yields without the pollinators. You will get better yields with them. There is a pollinator boost, which is usually more than an insecticide spray. So we really recommend Scout. Know what the levels are. Spray only if above threshold. And if you are having to spray, if you can do it as late in the day as you can to minimize the risk to that pollinator boost that you would normally get, that would be the best strategy.
Okay, and a question just came in regarding timing of application. So,
well, the trick is you wouldn't want to let them lay too many eggs on the pods. So the unfortunate thing is you probably are still spraying when there's flowering going on. So once you start getting some pod development, you'd want to be spraying fairly quickly if you are above threshold. But we do caution people, use the thresholds that are available. There's been good research on them, so that would be the best strategy.
So need pod development before you'd be starting then?
Well, you don't need pod development. If you're well above threshold, we encourage people to scout actually in the early flowering stages. If you're above threshold, you could basically spray at any time. But don't wait until there's too much pod development, because then it might become more revenge spraying where they've laid the eggs and the damage is done. So don't let there be too much in the way of pod development before you spray if you are above threshold.
Okay, and then just a follow-up question was product.
Well, the only products registered are pyrethroids. So there's a few different options you can choose from. There's Matador or the generic versions of it. The Silencer, La Bamba, Zavada, so that group, Lambda cyhalothrin. Then there's deltamethrin, and that's your Decis, Palessi, deltamethrin, and Volium, which is a combination of Lambda cyhalothrin and chlorantraniliprole, which is your Coragen. So you've got three options, really: your Matador, Silencer products, your Decis products, or Volium Express.
Okay, great. Thanks, John.
Yep, you're welcome.
Okay, so a little bit about crop update here now before we get too much farther. We've been talking a lot about canola and timing wise, and I guess when you look at the canola crop, we do have a wide range of stages due to the long seeding window. Later seeded canola now is early bolting stage. With the earliest seeded canola fields in full flower, I've seen a couple of fields of those in the southern part of the province for sure, and the eastern side. Fungicide application is ongoing, and like we mentioned or we talked about already, the dry conditions are making the decision a little bit difficult to make. John, when should we start scouting for diamondback moth? The larvae.
So diamondback moth, you can start scouting ASAP. The adults have been here for a while. Actually, we had some, looks like some flushes that got blown in June, early to mid-June. The southwest hasn't been terribly high in the trap counts. Northwest higher than the southwest. And that can happen because it depends on where the winds, when they get blown in, where they get deposited. But they're here. I haven't had any reports of high levels yet. It seems to be trace levels around Carmen here when we sweep. And instead of 10 sweeps, I might get 1 or 2 at most. Now, not that sweeping is the appropriate technique for making a threshold call. Tapping a foot square of plants, we would get maybe a couple. That's about it. So we're not anywhere near threshold, at least in the Carmen area. And I've had no reports of anyone being near threshold. But now is the right time to be scouting. We're probably into at least our second generation by now. So that's why we pulled our traps after the counts last week, because that first generation is pretty much done. Any adults we're getting now are a mix of things blowing in and second generation. So yeah, now's the time to be scouting.
Usually find them under the leaves. Is that where they hang out, or the larvae?
Yes, but also you will find them higher on the plant. Sometimes you will see them even on flowers and buds as well as leaves. The other thing to look for, when they're young larvae, they don't eat their way right through the leaf. They will eat just kind of the surface and leave what looks like a clear window. And sometimes those windows will break eventually. And sometimes you'll see a partial window or this window painting effect on the leaves. And you'll notice that it's obviously, I mean, it's too late for there to be flea beetle feeding. Sometimes they're small, sometimes they're a bit bigger, but it's not shot holding, it's actually window painting. You'll see a little bit of that from the small larvae, and then the older larvae, they'll be defoliating, taking chunks out of the leaf. So if you start seeing some of that window painting, you know you've got some around. Sometimes it's easier to see some of the damage than the larva. But if you're seeing that window painting and some of the feeding, shake some plants, see how many you have, and don't get too overexcited if it's just a little bit of window painting on the leaves, because the plants can usually grow through that really well.
Okay, great. Thanks, John.
Yep.
Winter wheat and fall rye. The grains in the head filling stage. And you could see by the pictures there, some of the heads are pretty much full seed development in them already. So we're definitely progressing well with both winter wheat and fall rye. Those would be pictures of winter wheat fields. So again, that crop seems to be doing okay, and didn't see any issues with early issues with fusarium in that field when I was looking through it yesterday. So peas are flowering, and most areas, most advanced fields are starting to show pods already. Yesterday when I was looking, I wasn't seeing any major number of aphids. So that's good. And the fields all that I was in seem fairly healthy. So hopefully we made it through the pea leaf weevil feeding on the nodules, and hopefully we're not going to get too much of an issue. I know we talked about it quite a bit throughout the crop talks we've done in the last 3 sessions. Spring wheat. I put the bottom chart is last week's chart, and the top one is this week's. So you could see where we've dropped from excellent to good in in some areas. And I think mainly that might be because of some of the dry conditions in some areas. It's varying, but I guess I think some producers are starting to see some dryness showing up. Guys are still spraying for fusarium. I would say right now we're at least 50% complete. I think what we're seeing is some of the later seeded fields that producers are looking at right now. And Todd mentioned this today when we were talking about the 0 to 30 centimeters of soil moisture. So when you do look, a lot of the area, especially the areas that have been getting rain, they're definitely in the wet to optimal. There are some dry areas that are showing up to very dry areas. So those areas are probably where we're going to have a little bit more indecision on whether we should be spraying for Sclerotinia. But again, those will be individual fields on individual areas, as we just don't have a general dry area. I think it's pockets, and I think we still need to be checking and watching and making sure we're making a decision according to weather conditions and environment. Soybeans advancing fairly good. I did notice that right now, in my opinion, anyways, and maybe we can get Dennis Lang on next week to talk about it, but I'm seeing the plants maybe a little bit shorter than they were last year at this time. They're developing. We're starting to see flowers pretty much throughout the field, and starting to see a lot of flowers that are very close to the ground. And so I just don't think they've had a chance to extend. And I think what we're going to need is that rain in the end of July or early August to make sure that crop makes it. So again, there's another crop that we'll be keeping an eye on over the next little while here. Don't really have any more questions for the scouting panel. A lot of them, as I mentioned before, are busy with the diagnostic school, which completes this week. We do have the diversification centers tours that are going to be coming up. Wato is on July 17th, so that'll be next week. Passaic or Prairies East is on July 30th. PCDF is August 5th, and MCDC is August 6th. So next week, over the next couple of weeks, we'll be having members from these different diversification centers come on and talk about what they have going on and talk a little bit about their tours. So if you want to find out what's going on at their sites and see if it's going to be something that you want to go and attend, we'll be updating them on CropTalk. This is the contact information for the different centers. And there's the poster for the Wato tour happening on July 7th. So next Thursday, they do ask if you could RSVP because it is kind of a bus tour where they go to a couple different sites. So the bus is leaving at 10 a.m. sharp. So if you need to be in Melita at the Ball Diamonds for around 9:15, that would be great. And then get registered, and then we'll be touring around the different things that Scott's got prepared for everybody to see there. Crop production extension specialists throughout the province. There's where we're located and our contact information. So if you have any questions, definitely feel free to call. We can give you a hand solving problems or help you find out somebody that can. We're going to be doing a lot of surveys in the field over the next little while here. So if you've are interested in being involved with disease surveys, give us a call and we can definitely put you on our list. Our livestock and forage specialist in the province. A lot of haying being done right now. A lot of good quality hay being put up because of the conditions. So if you've got questions, whether they be regarding feed testing, water situation, anything you have with cattle on pasture, get a hold of any one of these people. They'll give you a hand there. there is the MASC service centers and the locations and phone numbers. So if you got any questions regarding your crop insurance, hail insurance, if you still thinking about putting it on, contact those offices and we can they can give you a hand there. And that's it for this week. So thanks for attending. Thanks, Todd, for giving us your update on Sclerotinia and what to look for, timing, and different products that are available. Really good information. Join us next week, July 16th, for the next edition of Crop Talk. Thanks for attending.